When I was a child, I developed a peculiar set of sleeping habits due to a recurring nightmare. The nightmare always began the same. Me and my cousin would be playing with Legos, laughing and remarking about each other's creations. Then we would hear a knock. A deep and awkward set of hits against wood, echoing throughout my room, would fill my head. I would pause, and suddenly I felt anxiety. It was a sixth sense of fear and excitement, except I thought I had no reason to feel that way. Surely it was just my mother, respecting our privacy and asking for admittance into the room. I would call out, "Come in," and look to the door. It wouldn't open. Instead, the closet door would open, and a disfigured being resembling a man would race out and grab my cousin by the face. He would squeeze, and my cousin's brain and skull would shatter. Blood sprayed everywhere, and I stood speechless. I wouldn't even react. I just stared at what was left of my cousin. Then the same would be done with me. I would scream out for my mother, not to save me, but to protect herself. I would die before my voice would alert my mom. The last thing I'd see in the dream was a yellowed and wrinkly hand clenched in front of my eyes. This reoccurred for 2 weeks, each time resulting in waking up to clenched sheets and cold sweats. Soon, on the beginning of the 3rd week, I would find a way to fall asleep after my nightmare. I would grab my stuffed bear and let him dangle over the edge of my bed, holding his arm tight. I would awaken to him fallen on the ground. It was a simple solution to my problem, and I quickly stopped having the nightmares and returned to normal sleep. I would feel reassured that I had a firm grasp on my bear, and it helped the anxiety dissipate. Today, now older and living on my own, I went through a couple boxes when I was clearing out my cluttered garage for space. There were a few old pictures I rummaged through, and I found one that must have been my parents taking a picture of me sleeping. The picture was from an older camera, before digital printing was a thing. Although the sides were yellow and torn, the quality was still surpassingly crisp. I noticed it was after I had the nightmare, so my hand was dangling over the edge. I smiled and was deep in thought for a moment, divulging myself in an old memory. I was about to toss the picture when I took one last look at the bear I was holding. Except there wasn't a bear I was holding onto. The bear was a few inches away from where my hand was. Instead of a happy, smiling bear that brought me warmth and joy, there was a different hand grasping mine. Instead of a fluffy brown bear hand, there was a yellow one, wrinkled and clenched. I used to be such a sound sleeper. I'd close my eyes, rest my head on the pillow, and when I opened my eyes again, a second later, it'd be lights out. That's how it used to be, at least. A week ago, as I was about to get into bed, I heard a loud noise from downstairs. When I went down to investigate, I found one of the living room windows wide open and the lamp on the table next to it lying on the floor, shattered. I sighed loudly and shut the window tight. I got a dustpan and brush, cleaned up most of what was left of the lamp, and threw it in the trash. I was exhausted by this point, so I groggily walked back up the stairs into my bedroom and into bed. The warmth of the bed was comforting. I was completely relaxed. That's why I was so curious as to why I couldn't fall asleep. As I said before, I was a sound sleeper. I never had trouble sleeping, especially when I was tired and wanted to sleep. So what was eating at me in the back of my mind, keeping me awake? That was when the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and a terrifying shiver went down my spine.
Are you awake?
A quiet voice whispered in my ear. I froze. Whoever was speaking was so close I could feel their warm breath on my ear. I didn't react. I tried my hardest to pretend to be asleep, to hope whoever this was would just leave me alone. After a few minutes, I could no longer feel their breath on my ear, but I still didn't move. I didn't want to until I saw the sun rise. I have never been happier than when I saw that first ray of light the next morning. I jumped out of bed, got dressed, grabbed my car keys, and shot out the front door, having just enough time to look at the now empty table, which once had a lamp. I drove to my closest friend's house and told him what had happened. He assured me I could stay with him for a few nights and called the police for me while I sipped some coffee. The police questioned me as you'd expect, and I gave them my house keys so they could search to see if they could find any evidence. They came back that afternoon to return my keys and told me they found no sign that anyone was still in my house. Unconvinced, or maybe just nervous, I stayed at my friend's house for the rest of the week, finally returning home on Sunday. My friend offered to stay with me, but I assured him it wouldn't be a problem. I did cautiously check the house again, though, just to be sure. Once I was finally confident, I crawled into bed and closed my eyes to drift into what I hoped to be my first pleasant sleep this week. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my side. I reached down to see what was wrong and found my hands covered in blood. "I guess you were awake," the voice whispered.